Ladies and gentlemen, now that the Will Smith, Chris Rock debacle started to calm down, we're going to go back to what I do best on this channel, not to talk about foolish entertainers who put themselves above their profession, but entertainers who put themselves into profession and dedicate everything they had, or they did dedicate everything they had to the sport they love. So today is another of our vintage podcasts talking about hockey players of the 1960s and 70s that left a mark not only on the teams they played for and the leagues they played for, but their teammates and their era. Now, I was stalking on Facebook in recent hours to the great Howie Menard, the NHL pro who had a great career in the major leagues and minor pro, and I brought up the name of this guy, and people like Alan Globinski and the other people that have crossed paths with on the internet and in what I call promotion of our authors group, talk highly of this guy. Now, Rick Foley may not be a household name to many, but for those who played with him and played against him, they had the utmost respect. One of the best offensive defensemen of his era that wasn't scared to take a penalty, and allegedly, and it's been two sources I found this, one of the few NHL players to fight two guys at once and win. So that's not all the aspects of career we're talking about, but it's interesting how people remember someone as a person that got only one fighting major for taking on, at the time, two of the most prominent members of the New York Rangers. Now, today we're going to talk about the legend of Rick Foley. And we're going to be quoting from different sources, including a great site you should check out, VintageHockeyCardsReport.com. Now, what was ironic about this, he only had one hockey card. Now, it's seen on our podcast channel here, with a kind of a Gary Dornhofer look with the beautiful 1970 sideburns. Now, according to Vintage Hockey Card Report, he was a defenseman that could put up numbers, and he put up numbers for sure. He was also a defenseman that enjoyed a little time in the penalty box. Rick Foley, to many, was unorthodox. He could simultaneously be among the league's top scorer and be a penalty leader as well, and we're going to see the rough numbers. Now, he only played one major season, full major season in the NHL, in 71-72, and he was among league leaders for defensemen that year in goals and points. Now, the Flyers gave him a decent shot, but with all the new players coming in, including Andre Moose Dupont, it was more of a numbers game. Other defensemen obviously were in the mix, and he would have been have a regular turn in 2022 because a 6 or 7 defenseman like him would be needed, but sometimes the Flyers will only run 5. He put up numbers that were not quite on par with Bobby Orr, but there were great numbers for a blue liner nonetheless. Now, unfortunately, Rick passed away at the age of 70 on September 29th, 2015, at the what I call the young age of 70 in Burlington. Now, the product of Niagara Falls, Ontario, one of the most important hockey communities in Canada, played in the NHL with the Blackhawks, the Flyers, and the Red Wings. He also played in the WHA with the Toronto Toros. Now, he played first came to major prominence in '63 with the Toronto Marlies in the Metro Toronto Junior Amateur Hockey League, an association that was separated from the OHA for a few seasons. With the Marlies, Foley showed his ability to be an offensive defenseman. In 30 games, he scored 6 and assisted on 24 for 30 points. He also sat a modest 64 minutes in the penalty box. Now, 6'4", 235, he was 225. Big drink of water. He was nearly a point per game playoff performer that year with 8 and 9 contests. Now, Toronto eventually lost in the finals to the Neil McNeil Maroons. The following year, the league ceased with the Marlies and the Generals joining back up with the OHA Junior A circuit. Rick split the season, playing 8 games with Toronto and 8 more with Oshawa. Now, by 1967, he returned to Junior B hockey, which, according to published reports, he was being scouted heavily. After that, until turning pro in '67 with the Charlotte Checkers of the very, very aggressive and talented EHL Association. Now, that year he finished 4th in the league with 222 penalty minutes in his rookie campaign. He returned to the Checkers in '68, and his offensive side began to shine. He finished 7th in the league with 78 helpers, while also scoring 17 goals for 95 points over 71 games. They were great numbers, but this was a league at the time when you needed 119 points just to crack the top 10 in 1968. Now, that year, Foley was 9th overall in the league with 192 PIMs, and the Checkers reached the AHL finals before falling to the great Clinton Comets. Now, it was more the same in 69, but with Foley again playing for Charlotte. Now, this would be his last year in the AHL. He tied for 7 in assists with 58 and finished 9th with 212 minutes in the sin bin. He also appeared in 2 CHL games with Dallas and 5 games in the WHL with the Portland Buckaroos. Now, this is where his fortunes changed drastically. The Buckaroos eventually liked what they saw, and he became a permanent fixture in the lineup for 1970. Now, he was second with 222 penalty minutes and sat 65 in just 8 playoff games as Portland lost a tough final to the Vancouver Canucks. Now, this was the WHL version, of course. Now, Foley took the title of heavyweight champion in 71, leading the WHL with 306 minutes in penalties, 116 more than the second-place contender. Undefeated champion, of course. Wasn't just an enforcer, he was a protector. He was protecting a lot of the key players on the side. Now, that year, he finished 6th with 54 assists and cracked the top 10 with 71 points. The Buckaroos were champions, finally, taking out Phoenix in the finals as he defeated the Roadrunners. He also saw his first National Hockey League action with the Blackhawks that year. Now, get this. He played several games in the playoffs, and obviously, his name would have been on the Stanley Cup, were it not that stopping Montreal, they couldn't stop Montreal in Game 7. So, technically, he came within 15 minutes of winning a Stanley Cup with Chicago. Now, would he eventually found his way to Philadelphia in 71-72 and put up some dynamite numbers. And let's just go over that season very quickly. In 72, he had 11 goals and 25 assists for 36 points in 58 games, 168 minutes and penalties. Now, this was the only campaign where he never played in the minors. Now, 73, he was still in the Flyer system with the Richmond Robins, where he had 21 points in 26 games. And then 73, he played with the San Diego Gulls, the original incarnation, with 19 points in 31 games. 74, he was in the Detroit system, 7 games with no points. And he also played with the Baltimore Clippers, a big total, 70 points in 65 games, including 14 goals and 164 minutes and penalties. 8 points in 9 playoff games. With Syracuse, the next year, AHL, he tied his highest point total for the minor leagues, 306 minutes in 69 games, 53 points, including 13 goals. Now, 76 was a weird campaign. He played with the Clippers again, but eventually ended up with the Toronto Toros, where he scored his first WHA game with only a goal, with only 6 minutes in the sin bin. Now, 77-78, he found himself with the great Brantford Alexanders of the OHA Senior League, 16 points in 76 minutes and penalties in 17 contests, and 78, 20 minutes and penalties in 6 games with 4 points, including 1 goal. WHA totals, a goal and 2 assists for 3 points, 11 games. NHL overall, 67 games, 37 points, 11 goals, 180 minutes and penalties. And, of course, the 4 games with the Blackhawks, where he had 1 helper in Chicago's Stanley Cup final run. Now, the main reason I think that people will remember Rick Foley was not only his tenacity on and off the ice, his dedication to the game. It was around Christmas time, 1971, the Flyers-Rangers game, they had a big rivalry at the time. There was a big contest in Madison Square Garden, December 15, 71. There was a little bit of bagarre by the both benches, and Foley, who was not scared to back down, got into a tussle with Jim Nielsen, the great Aboriginal defenseman for the Rangers. And Glenn Sader was also involved. Now, according to published reports at the time in the New York Times and other media, the fight lasted about half a minute to a minute. And one of the rare times one player fought 2. There was no indication who started it, but we know who finished it. According to the media that covered it, Foley was giving a decision against both of them by those who witnessed the event. Now, both Nielsen and Glenn Sater, who eventually started playing with the Montreal Canadiens in the mid-70s and went on to be a coach and GM champion in Edmonton, Jim should be in the Hockey Hall of Fame, they received 5 majors, while Foley only received 1. However, Foley also received a game misconduct from veteran referee Ron Wicks for reasons that still remain unclear. Now, when he passed away in September of 2015, a lot of people thought back to that incident when thinking about his career. Now, I don't know if this changed NHL history, but to my knowledge, third man in would apply now. But at the time, I don't think that's really applicable, as we like to say. Now, the 58 games in 1972 again, a very, very popular Flyer team, and probably the best Flyer team before he won the 2 cups. Now, talking about his rookie card, it's quite interesting. It was part of the first series, which showed that they were thinking maybe he was going to be in NHL for quite some time. He was number 80 in the OPG set and number 98 in the Topps collection. Again, on the back of the card, there was a very interesting cartoon which was applicable to that set. It said that Rick and his wife had the same birthday, September 22nd, and the two were also married on that same day. So a romantic at heart, I think, as a lot of people know, if you have to do something for your wife, is better to do on your birthday. What better thing to do to marry her on your birthday? So this podcast is dedicated to Howie, to my great pal Alan Glubinski, to the various NHL players I've talked to over the year that talk about that 62 to 76 era as one of the best eras of hockey. And of course, my great friend Bo Sheaves from Woodstock, Daniel Bowden, Andrew Lippert, all the great followers of the channel. They like the vintage stuff. But I'd like to see if there's any tape on Rick in the Chicago playoff run in 71. I would gather if he played 4 games, he probably was not say an injury replacement, but probably a road person to be a protector for the key players. But Foley was, from what I heard, is a strong fighter. You don't survive the AHL, the EHL, the WHL, the WHA, the NHL in the Ontario Junior A and Junior B leagues unless you're tough. And well over 1,000 minutes and penalties plus in his career, and again, a very respected player. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what we're doing here with our vintage podcast on the stars and legends like Rick Foley and Alan and Howie and everybody else of that era, and there's many, we've covered it on the channel. We just got some thank yous for some podcasts we're doing on the old Kings and the Blues of the late 60s, early 70s. We appreciate your support. Like I said, if you like what you're doing here, give us a like, comment, and subscribe. Requests are always appreciated because I want to make this channel for you, the fan of vintage NHL. Not only the old vintage of the 1918 and 1949 era, but I call it the expansion area, where the WHL and the AHL and the other minor leagues had all these talented players who finally got a chance in the NHL with expansion. And boys, did it make the game better. And legends and have been born and celebrated since then. And let me tell you, what a pleasure to talk about somebody like Rick Foley and the different players we feature here. Again, my honor, and Howie Menard, little shout out. I hope I did your buddy justice, and I hope you appreciate it. Have a good day. Bye.